Hi everyone, thanks for coming to our presentation. So today we'll be talking about a project of the Canadian Observatory on Homelessness. It was a demonstration project, so Making the Shift Youth Demonstration Project, measuring the effectiveness of a Housing First program for youth. So we're going to focus on essentially the element of youth choice within the Housing First program and some of the institutional barriers, structural barriers, and then some of the successes as well. So I'm Sloan. I worked on the project for 2 years, and this is Avery.
I'm Avery. I was a youth and participant in the program for a couple of years.
So we'll just have a conversation, and we'll kind of go through a narrative around Avery's experiences and then Avery's opinions about experiences within the program. I'll also bring in another youth's narrative they just wrote about their experience within the program. So I'm just going to read that now. So this person says that the program has been a tremendous help to me these past few years, and it's gotten me through some very difficult times. My first caseworker was very kind, supportive, and helpful throughout my time with her. And she helped me check out places that taught me a lot about renting, how to be successful in finding a good place to rent and live. After that, I had another caseworker who was very supportive, friendly, and helped me get through a lot of stressful situations by providing me with advice and resources. He was my caseworker through most of my time with Making the Shift, and he's gone above and beyond with the amount of support he has provided me with. He was very approachable and easy to talk to about anything, which made him an excellent caseworker. I like that he always followed up with me promptly, and we met frequently to discuss how things were going, to check in. He also taught me a lot of independent skills: groceries, what you need to live on your own, budgeting, dealing with roommates and landlords, reviewing leases, and more. I don't know how I could have ever changed from living in unstable environments to moving into a place by myself and with roommates, or ever taught myself how to make it there without making the shift. This program gave me the opportunity to work on myself, have freedom, feel safe, and made it much easier to deal with other stressors I had in my life. So dealing with addiction and mental health, etc. I genuinely feel that I have this program to thank for me being able to be sober today, getting into counseling to deal with my mental health, getting into a college program that I love, graduating, being able to keep a steady job in my field, and being able to live in an apartment by myself and know how to afford it by budgeting and using the tips I've learned from Making the Shift. During my time with the housing program, I felt that I was listened to and was able to easily talk about any questions or concerns I had about living on my own or about the program. I was never forced to live anywhere or rushed to move in. I always felt like I had the choice about where I got to move and live, and was even recommended to not live in certain places because of certain issues that I had learned were important to keep in mind when moving somewhere. I also never felt like I was waiting on anything, as a staff were always making sure that I knew what was going on with my housing and other things. It was tough trying to find places where this program could improve, but I had some general notes. I hope that this program becomes permanent so that it can help others that were in my situation get help that they need to live a better life. More support groups and info groups with all or most of the youth in the program would be good. Those were places where we shared our experiences with each other. And it was good to learn about what was going on there, to talk to each other about things that we may not have thought of before. So that was one youth's experience in the program. So now we're gonna move over to conversation. So I have some prepared questions, and we'll just kind of move through them casually. So first question is, can you share your early experiences with the Housing First program? When did you start participating?
So I think it was about 2017. I was living at Windrose, which was like it's a transitional housing place for young women. and one of the staff like brought it up to me that there was going to be, I had the chance to like be, open the envelope at like 50-50 chance to get in. So I did it, and like, yeah, so that's when it started. And I my first worker was like really awesome. They helped me get out of the transitional place, find an apartment, and like I don't think I would have been able to sign a lease had I not like had my worker like go in with me. And like, so like I had like a really 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 like good beginning of like beginning experience with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so because I didn't explain this earlier, I'll just explain that Avery's talking about opening the envelope. So the demonstration project was part program, part research, and researching how that program went. So the research design included a randomization element. So some youth were randomized into getting Housing First services, and some youth were randomized into not getting any services. Um, and so it's a randomized control trial. The control group, the group randomized out of the research, are meant to show essentially a comparative between the two groups. So how effective was the program based on the experiences of youth who were denied access to services. So that might come up later, just to note. Yeah, so just more generally, what were your experiences in the program? And I wrote, when did you feel most free, most like yourself, or most supported? So like, when did you feel good?
Like once I like got my like that was like my first like own like apartment. So like once I had that, like I don't know, it was just like a whole next level of like freedom, and not even just freedom, but like peace. Like having like my own like, you know what I mean, like safe place, and like being able to like decorate it. And like it was just like that was the coolest feeling in the world, I think. Like, I was like 17 years old, and I'd been like in foster care and like living in like transitional housing, couch surfing, like being homeless. Like it was not like, it was like, so going from that to like getting my own place, like it was literally like life changing. Like I don't know where I would be like without that today, honestly. Like,
Yeah, so the freedom came from kind of independence and maybe security of
yeah.
having like a place, like a home base.
And like it definitely like taught me like a lot of just like independence and like dealing with like bills and like dealing with landlords and dealing with like, I don't know, just like things that I never had to deal with before. And then it really like, it's helped me in the long run, because like now I can like deal with that stuff, and it doesn't give me like a lot of like, it's like as much anxiety, because like I've had to deal with it because of that. So you know what I mean, like having my own apartment because of that program, and like it's just made like it, I don't know, it's just been, it was one of like the most like amazing things that like I don't know what I would have done to get off like the streets without it. And
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so on the theme of choice, um, like how was the process of looking for housing? Like,
oh, like my worker would like send me, like we kind of like discussed what area I wanted to be in. We found stuff in my price range, but like I was the one that like booked my viewings and stuff, and like she would come with me. But like it was very like, I don't know, like it was kind of just like she was going with what I wanted to do. It was very like I had all the choice in it, and I really liked that. Like that was cool. And
mm-hmm.
like I was like, yeah, I found a place on like this street, and I want to go like check it out. Like, will you come with me? And like I ended up like, I think, signing the lease that day, and I was like, I left with a key and like
Well,
everything. Like, what the hell? Like that was like crazy.
yeah, it's pretty
Yeah.
cool. It's a nice feeling. Um, okay, so when was the program most useful to you and why?
Um. Well, I was in an abusive relationship, so the whole time that like I was a part of the program, and there was a point where my abuser had started like relapsing and spending a lot of my own money on his own personal usage. And so without the program at that point in my life, it wouldn't have left me like financially stable enough to like it. Because of that, I got to keep my apartment, and I was able to like like I literally, I think it was a month after the program, a couple months after the program ended, that I left him.
Hmm.
And like, I don't know, like it was, so that definitely was like, that is where it helped me out the most, was like I would have lost. I wouldn't have been able to like pay my rent because he was just like I would wake up and there would be money gone out of my bank account. And, like so
Wow.
like without that program, like I would have been screwed. You know what I mean? So that was definitely where it like was the most helpful for me.
Yeah. Can you say like what specific element? Like, was it the rent supplement or was it like the support from the
The rent,
caseworker?
yeah, like the rent supplement specifically in that sense, like
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah. Because someone, I guess, like it was being paid like by an agency or someone like
Yeah.
automatically. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. It was separate from the bank account.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like it was like I only paid like a certain amount of my rent and then like it was just paid directly to my landlord. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Gotcha. Hmm. Okay. So the next question is moving on to when was the program least helpful or frustrating or even harmful?
Um like it wasn't even the program, it was more just like my I had a worker who had started to realize that my ex was abusive and I think my ex realized that and he like really screwed up that relationship with that worker to the point that like I had to like switch workers and like that was when it was kind of like the least helpful to me because I felt like because of my abuser and me being abused that I was completely like treated differently and like they I know I couldn't but like I couldn't tell them what was going on because I was so scared. You know what I mean? And like so
Yeah.
that's for me like that where it was became like I don't know, like I have a couple friends who were a part of it and like they got continuing support with their workers after I didn't. And like I felt like that was kind of just because of that. And like that made me like feel like a little bit like shit because I was like I was being beat like every day. And it's like you didn't know that, but like you know what I mean? Like they didn't know that, but it's
Mm-hmm.
I don't know, like it was like to me that's when it was like the least helpful. And that's where I kind of like that's the only like downside with it with me is because like I get that like my abuser said and did things, but it's like also like I was being like abused, and it's like I don't even. It was just like that was the only. There was like a whole yeah, but
Yeah. So when the program ended, you know that other youth kind of got continued support or like maybe more.
I was not yeah.
Yeah.
That was
Okay.
kind of like hard for me because then I left my abuser and like
That's
going
when
to
you need the
work. I was
most
like also
support.
like that would have been really nice to have like some kind of like continuing support. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Totally. Yeah. Absolutely. That's crucial. So maybe, I mean, maybe it would be useful for um, caseworkers in the program to have had more training around being able to recognize intimate partner violence. And
Yeah, like domestic violence. Like that's like something I seriously think like because like if someone had actually sat me down and like asked me like, is he hitting? I would have broke down. Like you
mm-hmm,
know what I mean? Like I think it's really hard. How do you have that conversation with someone? Right? Like that's what I'm learning. Like I've helped a couple friends in those situations since getting out of it myself, and it's really hard. Like how do you go about? It's a really uncomfortable situation, but like that's what I'm like. That's one thing I really like enjoyed. Like when I talk with like Charlotte and stuff about like do other public speaking is like that those like it needs to be uncomfortable like I'm like you know what I mean like those sometimes you need to go to the person like hey like are you okay like is he doing that? Again like sometimes like as awkward as that may be because like you know what who knows like maybe it's not but so far like I've done it and every time I've been right and
mm-hmm.
I think it's like just taking that tiny step like it's you know what I mean like that yeah
Yeah, the conversations need to be had. They're really tough, but yeah, when you notice something, it's important to confront it and um, yeah, focus on the relationship with you or the person experiencing um, the violence rather than maybe focusing on um, the other person. Like I think that there was maybe some conflict between that your ex-partner and a caseworker and like they didn't get along and that
yeah
became
but it's
more of the
also
focus.
like I felt like I was like you know what I mean? Like the only like what it was weird for me like I felt like I was like almost like being frowned upon for not like for like letting him take my phone and like text her but it's like what am I supposed to do it's like they didn't like, you know what I mean? It's like, it's if I didn't like, I was gonna be like beat, and it's like that's not like, you know, what am I supposed to? I'm like, I was also really sick at the time. I had gotten like 2 or 3 surgeries at like within like the span of like a year. Like I was not, I was like, I can't like defend myself. I was
Mm-hmm.
like, you know, it got to a point where I just kind of had to like submit to it, which sucked. Like it was really, really like that was like one of my lowest points. So like having like losing that feeling like I lost that support, like even though it was like financially still there, like I lost like a lot of what felt like the actual like support from that program, like when that happened, which
Mm-hmm.
was like really hard for me. But like that also like it, I don't know, yeah, like sorry, it was yeah,
Yeah, that's super significant. Yeah, 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 that's really unfortunate. It's really too bad. So I think, yeah, what I'm hearing is the need for, you know, a deeper engagement when people are seeing some of that conflict, and being able to be present with someone who's, you know, maybe not ready to leave, not able to leave, whatever, is there in the relationship in the
I just
present.
also think like maybe like I think just people need to be also more educated on the mindset of someone who's in a domestic relationship, especially. I was in one for 6 years. Like you get you're literally conditioned by someone. Like I was locked in an apartment for like so long. Like I wasn't allowed to leave without him. Like you get conditioned to that. It's survival mode. It's
Mm-hmm.
and like I don't think, and that's one thing I'm learning is like it's like I've had friends who've done like fucked up shit to me when they're in abusive relationships, but you kind of have to realize like they're in survival mode. Like you don't know what's
Mm-hmm.
going on behind those closed doors. Like you have to remember that like they're literally doing what they have to do to survive. And like I don't think it's fair, especially as like a professional, to like hold that against someone who is a victim who like it like to me that's just like as someone who wants to like take that career path I couldn't like so like that's why another reason I'm like a really big advocate specifically about like when it comes to like domestic abuse things now it's just because it's like it's something that I really think you're never going to understand fully unless you've been through it yourself. So I think there needs to be more advocates and people that are talking about it from a firsthand experience.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the experience is so valuable.
Because like it happens to so many people and you would never know. Like so many people were so shocked when like, you know, like people thought like we were dating for 6 years, like everything
Mm-hmm.
was, you know, like no one like so many people didn't know. Like certain people kind of like picked up on like some, but no one knew how bad it was until I came out. Like and like you know what I mean, like and like that just made me realize like how many other women are going through this and like
Mm-hmm.
hiding it better than I was, you know what I mean, and like it's yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So in terms, yeah, in terms of choice, like, yeah, it sounds like
Okay,
your
sorry, I
choice.
got a little bit off topic there.
No, it's relevant, so relevant
Yeah, it's
because
actually
your
relevant. It's
your choice was really constrained, not just within the program, but in your life, right? Like
yeah,
you were really controlled in that abusive relationship, and so in order to, I think, like strengthen your agency, your choice to whatever, even leave that relationship or whatever you may have wanted at the time, like caseworker relationship
yeah.
seems like pretty essential for like supporting your choice, your access to choice. Yeah. Okay. So we've talked a bit about, you know, how the Housing First program ended. Basically, it was supposed to run for like about 2 years, based on funding. It was it was a pretty precarious program. Funding
Yeah,
was
like
not.
it was like me and my friends it was kind of anxiety provoking
Yeah.
at the end, like when it's like, am I gonna have to pay my full rent this month? Am I not? Like I need to know. Like it became like, oh, we're gonna let you know like this day, and it's like, okay, like I was like, I mean like between like me and my like ex, like we could afford it, but I was like, what about the people who like have a solo income? I was like, what about like, you know what I mean? I was like, that's really short notice. I was like, what if they literally cannot cover it, or if they can cover it and then they have no food for the month, they can't pay their bills? Like,
Yeah, it was a problem for a lot of people. Absolutely. So, and that was throughout. That wasn't just at the very end. So that was like, I think even at the end of year one and throughout. Um, okay. So when the program ended, and it ended differently for you, like some people had like the full 2 years, some people had even, as you said, more support after the 2 years. What was the process of ending or exiting the program like for you? Like what happened?
I mean, like, I think I met with my worker like one last time, and that was kind of like literally just it. It was like, okay, bye. Like, and then, like from there, I ended up like leaving my abuser and like, getting a place with my neighbor who was also a participant in the program. And, so we have a townhouse now, and like, we're like lucky, but like, it's also like, what about people who didn't have like that support system, who didn't have those like, I don't know, like that really like that's where it gets me because it's like certain, some people have those supports, but like what about the people that don't? Like that's
Mm-hmm.
really hard. And like I was able to get a job and stuff after, and like that's helpful. But like for some people, might not be in a place where like they can do that. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So
Yeah. You can't rely on employment as the thing that helps you maintain your housing. Like housing is unaffordable right now. Lots of people live with, chronic health conditions like chronic pain. It's not something that you can measure and predict. It's not a sustainable support employment. Um, okay, so it was just kind of like, okay, is this the last meeting? Again, yeah, choice. Like there isn't much choice there in terms of like how um, you're participating in like the closing of a relationship with a caseworker or the closing of participation in a program. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, you shared a bit about where you're at now, that the program has ended. So you said that you left that abusive relationship. You're working right now, and you moved into a townhome with a friend. And so I guess like how much of that do you feel is related to the program, and how much of that do you feel is like,
I mean, like honestly, like a lot of it because like, well, like the friend who is like on the lease of the townhouse, like she was also a participant, and I never would have met her had I not like gotten that apartment
yeah,
from the program, right? So it all like weirdly enough, it all ties back to that. So
so yeah, so that friend who lived in your old apartment was also part of the Housing First demonstration project, and you met. So, and that kind of, yeah, that kind of connects back to the experience of the youth that I read at the beginning of the presentation. Right, they're saying like, I kind of wish that we could have met with other youth participants more regularly to talk about our experiences, right, and like the strength that comes from that shared experience,
yeah,
um, and common like identity or experience, um, and the potential strength in um, the strength of relationships as a resource, right? Like connection as a resource, and yeah, it seems pretty powerful. Okay, so we've talked a bit about randomization. So the process where yeah, part of the research design where some youth get um, access to Housing First services and some youth don't. Um, yeah, you've talked a bit about how even, I have my opinions about that as someone who fully participated in the implementation of the research project. Um, but do you want to talk a bit about how you feel as someone who had to participate in the research in that element? Like what you
what
thought of it?
what do you
Like
mean by?
what did you think about like randomization? What did you think about?
Oh, sorry, yeah. So like that, I thought that was like like looking back now, like I was really, really lucky. Like I opened that and there was a 50-50 chance that it could have said that I got in or I didn't, and I did. But I lived in a transitional housing building at the time. So I saw the girls that didn't get it. And like that crushed me. Like, cause like that was like my like golden ticket. Like literally, you know what I mean? Like that was like that's what it felt like. It was like, okay, this is my way like out of this like cycle of like this bullshit. And
Mhm.
like some of the girls that didn't get in, like I know that they're still struggling with housing. I know, and like that's really hard. Like, you know what I mean? Like the fact that like I don't even know, like it's just, you know what I mean? Like that's so like just mind-blowing that that's how like that's decided. Like it should be more, that's just, I feel like it gets too many people's hopes up. I'm like there's people that can deal with that, but like there's some people who can't. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, they already like don't have a lot if they're in a place where like they need a program like this. And I'm like, to put them in that much more of a vulnerable place is really like, that's just making them more susceptible to like another letdown. And I think that that's like, because like then they don't get in and they don't have any support and they're just like, oh, okay, well, I
Mm-hmm.
don't matter. You know what I mean? Like that's what I feel like, that's how I would have felt.
Yep,
It's like, and I
absolutely.
don't like, that's not fair. And like I get it's for research, but like that's also not like, that's so dehumanizing to like an already like person, like, oh, okay, I'm just literally like, I'm just a number. Like, you know, like that's how I would feel. Like I'd feel like, you know, I'm just like you literally open an envelope and like find, like, you know what I mean? Like that's so just very like technical and not
Mm-hmm.
human at all. And like I think when it comes to this type of like work and like working with youth who are that vulnerable, like it really needs to be more emotional and more supportive than just open this envelope and find out if we're going to support you or not. Like that's so like callous in my opinion. You know what I mean? Like it's very, it's cold hearted. Like it's so,
Mm-hmm.
and I know that like that's not anyone who like, you know, probably had to hand, like I feel bad for the people that even had to hand out the envelopes because like they obviously didn't make that decision. Like that
Mm-hmm.
sucks for them. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's like, it's just all around. Like it's not, I don't know. Like it's just,
It's
I don't,
violent.
I think a way better way that could have been done. Like, you know, maybe I don't know. Like, I can't think of something off the bat, but I feel like I could sit down for a couple hours and probably come up with, like, you know what I mean? A couple better ideas than, like, just like, that's
From
so,
that, yeah,
just, I don't know. I think it puts an already vulnerable person in an even more vulnerable place that's unnecessary completely, in
yeah,
my opinion. Like,
totally. And I mean, and we don't have to think of a better way of doing it. We could say we're not going to do it, right? And
like exactly. Like, because that's very, yeah, yeah.
totally. And I think, we don't need to do it. We have the research. We know what the outcomes are for people who experience homelessness or extreme housing precarity. The numbers are out. We're good. Like, we know. And randomized control trials are also kind of a standard in like medical and like biology research. Like, that's not what we're doing. We're not doing that. Um, and so often when like researchers or youth are pushing back against these like institutionally violent research frameworks, the answers are that come back are like, well, this is just the way it has to be. This is the way it is. Kind of like uncritical, maintenance of the status quo. And I like to bring up one of the other demonstration projects that was similar to Ottawa's, but it occurred in Hamilton. It was a Housing First demonstration project with Indigenous youth and partnering with Indigenous agencies. Um, and so the Indigenous agencies on the practice side, they had a say in the research, and they put their foot down. They said, no, we're not randomizing youth out. We're not randomizing youth into no treatment. We're not doing that. And so it is possible to not do it.
Like by one agency like putting their like foot down like that, I don't know, like that really just says a lot right there. Like that's all it takes, right? It's just no, like that's so like that's just not right, you know what I mean? And like that right there, like that, even just like kids in that program probably already like thank you, you know what I mean? Like that's just, it just
Mm-hmm.
shows that like, you know, like as someone who's been in that vulnerable of a spot, like it just shows that you're looking at them like that much more of a person, you know what I mean? Like
A human with a life, with an experience. Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Okay. So you've talked a little bit about, what you want to do in the future, wanting to support people who've had experiences that are similar to yours. Um, so with those plans in mind, how might what changes might you bring to the program that you experienced? What might you add? What might you change? What's kind of your opinion about the
I think
program?
as someone who's like been in like a domestic violence situation, that I really want to like advocate for is, I really think that any program where it's dealing with active youth or like even adults in homelessness or mental health or addiction, I think it's very important that there is someone who is properly trained in dealing with domestic violence, because it is not something that like just an average person can do. It's not like, it's something that you have to be so highly educated on, and like the mindset of how like a narcissist, like it's so like, I think that's really important, is like having someone who is specifically trained, because those situations, like they can get dangerous. Like look at all, like look at the news, like look at women like go missing, women get murdered like that. Like that's what I thought was gonna happen to me, and like I think that's like that's something that's not like, there's not enough support with, in that sense. Is like there's no like, there's like, you have like a support worker, but like what can they like, you know what I mean, like they can only do so much. Like I think that's one thing that like I would really advocate for in
Mm-hmm.
programs like that, is just, like have someone who's there to specifically like in, because like a like say like I had a worker, I think, reach out like once and ask if everything was okay with me and Brady, but like in those situations it takes more than once to break it
Yeah.
takes
Mm-hmm.
more than once to, like, it's someone's conditioned to that situation. It takes a lot more than asking them one time if it's, you know what I mean, if it's okay. And like, and someone who's trained in that would know that. Someone who's
Mm-hmm.
trained in that knows that this person is conditioned, or you know what I mean. It's psychological abuse. It's
Yeah.
like you're literally conditioned. You have to uncondition your brain. You have to literally reteach your brain like out of the narcissistic abuse and out of all these patterns and cycles, and like, so I think it's really important to like have someone who's educated on all those pieces, and to kind of like, because I don't know, I feel like if there had been that in that program, like I really do think that I would have benefited from that, because
Mm-hmm.
like I don't know, I didn't know, like I just think it's something that's really not talked about like enough at all, which is why I'm such a big advocate for it, is because
Mm-hmm.
it's sad and shocking like how many women are like in, even that, without knowing, or like going through it, you know what I mean,
Yeah.
and you never really tend to find out till it's too late. So I think it's really important to have resources that are there to reach out, and like if if they can be, and like if there's red flags that are seen, or if there's behavior that's noticed, I think it's really really important to have like a someone who deals with specifically that, who is educated at specifically that, who has like, I don't know, you know what I mean, like it's just to me that's so important, especially like the amount of like people I know, especially who have been addicts or homeless, like
Mm-hmm.
not saying it doesn't happen to like people that aren't as well, like it obviously does, but that have, that end up in abusive situation, like it's a high number. It's
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's something that like, any like program that's dealing with like people that are in like that high risk, or in those, high risk situations, like I think is really, really important to have someone trained to get them out of a situation if necessary.
And housing is so tied to that, right? Like if you're struggling with your mental health, then like, maybe you're struggling to pay rent, and you have constraints where you feel like you have to stay with someone in in a
I
home.
was on a bunch of drugs, and when I met my ex, and I literally stayed with him because it was either that or I was homeless. And then I got an apartment with him because, like, well, we'd been like, I don't know, like we were on the streets together. You know what I mean? I'm not like we've been dating, and but then it's like going from that. I think that's another thing. Like that, like I like talking about like when I like speak on like do other public speaking. Is it like going from like a relationship with someone on the streets to getting an apartment? Like it's very different. Like you learn this
Mm,
person. You're like you're living, like you learn their like who they are, and not just in survival mode, and like that's very very different. And
yeah.
it's very very like it's crazy, like it's, yeah, and just having someone there to like intervene if they like pick up on the red flags of domestic violence, I think is really really important.
Yeah, absolutely. So if you were to build your own program in the future, um, which you're already thinking about in different ways, like what might that be like? What might that look like? What would you like a program to look like for youth?
Like what would I like the housing program to look like?
Yeah, it could be a housing program. It could be just like a support program of any kind, right? Like you don't have to work in housing. It could be like what
Oh
you're
yeah, no,
interested
like
in.
what I wanna personally do is like I wanna have like somewhere set up where like this sounds obviously a little bit crazy. Like there's like money there that would be needed for this, and it's gonna like it's but it is a dream of mine in the
A
future, is
dream,
that
yeah.
I want to have like a piece of land with like tiny houses and like a full farm, and like have women that can stay there and like like work on the farm, like do farm work, and kind of like that's how you can, like pay rent, do farm work, like learn some life skills, like like and like specifically help women that are fleeing domestic like violence, that are getting off the streets, that don't have anywhere to go, like, and that I just, for me, like, a shelter was never productive. Like, what does that do? It just puts you into more survival mode. Like, why not give them, okay, here, like, learn how to do your dishes, like, here's your laundry, go work, like, you know what I mean, like, here's, like, pay rent. Like, I think that's really important, and I think that's something that, like, I would, like, that's what I got out of, like, the Housing First program. But, like, I don't know, like, I feel like that's just what I want to do. I want to, like, have somewhere where it's just a safe place for women to come and flee, like, domestic and situations and homelessness, and, like, learn, like, life skills, and not just be, like, thrown in a shelter with, like, all this free time. Like, I think it needs, like, like, still have free time, complete freedom, but, like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't know, like, it's just, like, a very, like, yeah, but
That's your dream. Yeah, it's really cool to be developing it. It sounds really awesome. Sweet. Okay, so pretty much at the end, lost track of time. I don't know exactly how long it's been, but I guess it's just time to move into the question period. So we'll see everybody there. Thanks for listening, and thanks Avery for participating.
yeah, no problem. Thank you.
Okay, see you soon, everybody.